Ray Kroc didn't get rich selling hamburgers. The man who built McDonald's into a global empire understood something the brothers who invented the restaurant never did. The money was never in the burger. It was in owning the system that reproduced the burger, the same way, at the same quality. In 10,000 kitchens, you would never have to walk into yourself. That's business history, not a slogan. The product was the bait. The platform was the fortune. A version of that exact question is now deciding who gets rich off the first drone war in history, and most people are watching the wrong asset. You're looking at the weapons, the finished, flying, exploding hardware. The real prize is sitting underneath it, invisible, and someone is about to walk off with it for a fraction of what it's worth. For most of human history, the spoil of war was territory. You won, you took land, you drew a new line on the map. That logic is now obsolete in the place where it matters most. The spoil of a modern war isn't the ground, it's the data the war produces. Every drone that flies a mission records what it sees, what it does, how it dies. Multiply that by a war fought with hundreds of thousands of these machines, and you get something no laboratory on Earth could ever generate. A complete combat true record of how autonomous machines actually behave when something is trying to kill them. That record is the raw material of every weapon that comes next. So here is the question this video is about, and it isn't a question about one country. It's the standing question for any power that is rich in battlefield data and poor in the factories to turn it into product. Who owns the data a war produces? Before we go further, answer it in one word in the comments. The real prize of a modern war, is it the steel or is it the data? One word. We'll come back to your answer. To make this concrete, take the live case where it's playing out right now, not as a country to root for, but as the clearest specimen on the table. Start with the asset. There's a defense tech firm with Ukrainian roots called Swarmer. Its software lets a single operator coordinate dozens, even hundreds of drones at once. A drone swarm flown by one human, and a lot of autonomy. What makes that software worth anything isn't the code. It's the training data. Roughly 100,000 combat and reconnaissance drone flights, recorded on video over the course of the war. That's the recipe. Then there's the offer on the other side. According to Bloomberg, the United States, in an arrangement still awaiting approval at the highest level, is seeking access to critical Ukrainian defense technology and the intellectual property rights that would let it reproduce those products itself. Reproduce, not by a batch, by the ability to make them. And before any of that, the Pentagon asked to test a range of those systems first. The drones, the electronic warfare gear. Reasonable on its face. We'll come back to how reasonable. Now notice the structural crack. The offer is made by officials, ministers, statesmen, the apparatus of a government. But the drones and the data underneath them are increasingly held in private hands. So the state makes a promise it does not actually own the means to keep. It has the offer. It has no platform. I've been watching this particular war's economics since the early months, and the speed of the shift still gets me. In the first year, the asset everyone counted was hardware. How many drones, how many shells? By now, the asset that actually matters has slid underneath the hardware, into the data, and most of the institutions involved haven't caught up to where the value moved. The officials hold the microphone. The private firms hold the goods. Here is the number that should stop you, and it's the heart of the whole thing. A company sitting on terabytes of unique, irreplaceable war data gets bought on the open market for a couple $100 million. The finished AI products built on top of that same data are worth billions, tens of billions. That is not a markup. That is a different universe of value, and the gap between the two is the entire story. Go back to the kitchen. You sell the raw recipe cheap. The recordings, the flight logs, the hard-won knowledge of what works when something is trying to kill the machine. Someone else franchises it into a finished product. And then you, the country that bled to generate that recipe in the first place, buy the franchised meal back at 100 times the price, and you pay for it out of your own defense budget. Sell the data once for hundreds of millions. Spend years buying back the products built on it for tens of billions. The firms that end up selling it back to you are defense big tech like Palantir. Joseph Schumpeter, the economist who gave us the idea of creative destruction, saw the engine underneath this almost a century ago. Innovation generates enormous value, but the spoils don't go to whoever generates the value. They go to whoever captures it. The inventor lights the fire, someone else sells the heat. So before we go on, type 1 if you'd sell the data and take the money now, type 2 if you'd hold it and build. There's a real argument on both sides. I want to see where you land before I tell you where the evidence does. Sell the recipe, and you'll spend a generation renting back your own kitchen. Now, the part most channels skip, and the part that decides whether you're watching analysis or watching someone pick a team. Read the same facts from Washington's side, fairly, on their own terms. From the Pentagon's chair, this isn't a heist, it's procurement. You have an ally generating the most valuable combat data on Earth, and you have the factories, the capital, and the engineers to turn that data into fielded systems at scale. Buying access to combat-proven technology and the rights to reproduce it is exactly how a manufacturing-rich power is supposed to behave. And testing a partner's systems before you stake your soldiers' lives on them isn't predatory. It's the responsible thing to do. No competent defense ministry would field an untested foreign drone. The record shows this is normal alliance behavior, not a villain's plot. Hold on to that because it's true, and any reading that ignores it is propaganda. But notice precisely what that reading explains and what it doesn't. It fully explains the buyer's incentive, why Washington wants the deal, and why the deal is rational for Washington. It does not touch the seller's structural loss. The fact that the purchase is reasonable for the one buying does not make it any less costly for the one selling. Two things are true at once, and the asymmetry survives the steelman intact. Rational for the buyer, expensive for the seller, both at the same time. That's not a contradiction, that's the deal. So what would the other move look like? The deliberate version of the McDonald's play, run on purpose instead of suffered by accident. It's structural, and it has three parts. First, ownership of the data sits with the state, not loose inside private startups that can be bought out from under it. Second, that data leaves the country only inside joint projects to build finished products, never as raw material packaged in a company someone abroad can simply acquire. Third, you build the platform that turns battle-tested designs into a franchise. The same proven drone, manufactured in many locations, with the recipe still owned by whoever wrote it. A military McDonald's, same product, many kitchens, one owner of the system. Only instead of hamburgers, drones. The instrument for that has a name in the source, a digital street of masters. Picture it in two motions. Horizontally, inventions compete against each other out in the open, the state playing the role of business angel, funding the contest. Then vertically, the winners get pulled up through defense procurement into real production at scale. Horizontal competition, vertical pull-through. If that sounds familiar, it should. It's the logic behind DARPA in the United States, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, the state body that funded the early internet and GPS, and behind South Korea's Agency for Defense Development, the ADD, which turned a country with no arms industry into a serious exporter inside a few decades. The state doesn't pick the winner, the state owns the racetrack. And the deepest precedent isn't modern at all. The Venetian arsenal, the shipyard of the Venetian Republic, could assemble a warship in a single day at its peak, centuries before the assembly line. Venice didn't get strong by owning the best individual ship. It got strong by owning the platform that produced ships faster than any rival could match. The Republic owned the kitchen. Every captain who sailed out was franchising Venice's recipe. I've watched this same fork resolve more than once in industries that have nothing to do with war. The party that owns the individual product wins the quarter. The party that owns the platform wins the decade. I used to think the product was the prize. Watching how value actually moved taught me otherwise. Step back, because this was never really about one country, and the case study was only ever a specimen. This is the standing dilemma for any data-rich, manufacturing-poor power in the arms economy now taking shape. If you generate unique battlefield data and you can't turn it into product yourself, you face one fork and there's no third path. Either you build the franchise, you own the data, you own the platform, you export the finished thing, or someone else builds the franchise on top of your data while you watch. The platform gets built either way. The only open question is whose name is on it. And this reframes what owning your data even means. Keeping that data isn't hoarding a secret, and it isn't paranoia. It's the simple refusal to be the unpaid supplier in somebody else's business model. Franchise or be franchised. The recipe doesn't care who wrote it. The system only pays whoever owns it. Which brings us back to Ray Kroc and the question we opened with. He understood that the fortune was never in the burger. It was in owning the system that made the burger anywhere, forever. Swap the hamburger for a drone, and the lesson doesn't bend an inch. The country that figures this out first won't be the one with the best single weapon. It'll be the one that owns the platform the weapons come off of. So here's the bet I want from you. Which power builds the first real military franchise? And, more interesting, on whose data does it get built? Drop your call in the comments. Mark it. We'll see in a year or two whose name ended up on the system. If this was the kind of breakdown you want more of, subscribe and stay for the next conversation. There are a lot of these worth your time ahead. Either way, thanks for the time.